Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. We are going to talk in the next 20 minutes or so, over the next 20 minutes or so, about building sustainable brands. And we've learned a lot in the recent past at Lando about how to do that. So if I could request Lauren to please bring up my presentation. Thank you. Um, right, let's get underway. So today we're going to talk about 10 things really, 6 success factors for building sustainable brands and 4 steps on how to build them. Before we get into the topic itself, let's look at some key data points and facts because there is a tremendous amount of data that we look at as well. So, over 80% of people say they will always pick a brand with a better sustainability record, and they believe companies should be helping to improve the environment. Among younger people, Gen Zers, over 70% are concerned about humanity's impact on the world, and they would also spend more money on a service that was sustainably produced. So, sustainability is one of their biggest choice drivers. And yet, on the other hand, we find that a minority of the world's 250 largest companies, only 4 in 10, discuss the UN's SDGs in their corporate reporting. So clearly, things are out of sync. Um, why is sustainable branding and design a commercial advantage? Well, companies are actively managing and planning for climate change, get an 18% higher ROI than companies that don't. Our colleagues at Kantar say that brands that have a high sense of purpose experience a 1.75 times more brand valuation rise over the past 12 years compared to the median rate of 86% or so, so more than twice as much. Unilever's sustainable living brands, which are a big chunk of their portfolio now, grew 70% faster than the rest of the business and delivered 75% of their growth in 2018. And the potential upside to tackling these sustainability challenges is quite significant. But on the other hand, sustainable business model innovation could open up economic opportunities worth $12 trillion and create 300 million jobs. So we've identified 6 key success factors in sustainability branding. What gets in the way very often is the negativity of the ongoing language in sustainability. And as human beings, we're primed to avoid it. So it might shock, but it doesn't inspire positive action. What we believe that instead, what you must do is make it positive. If a brand is to be successful in creating a movement and inspiring action, it needs to have a positive message because positive messages drive action and they drive emotional connection. So in the near past, we've worked with Coty to create We Do, the first sustainable at heart beauty brand that connects with Gen Zers, a brand that moves beauty from me to we. It's good for you, but it's good for the planet as well. The second thing that gets in the way is sameness. And there is a sea of sameness in the sustainability space. You'll see a lot of green, a lot of cardboardy brown, often, childlike typography, and the efforts that we see generally tend to fail to address the social and economic aspects of sustainability. They focus largely on the environment. We think you must be different. If a brand has to win, it has to look at how to do things differently and in a way that is relevant and compelling. Brands that are winning, like Tesla, are sustainable, but they're also deeply desirable at the same time. Tesla is sustainable at the heart, but the products it produces are state of the art works of art. The other thing that gets in the way is that the whole topic is massive. It's just too big to understand. It's very immense. The consequences are devastating, and people go, I can't do very much about it. So, what do we make of all this? Well, we say simplify language because single use was named Word of the Year in 2018. And if a brand is to win, it has to ensure its messages are clear and simple. Just the way the use of single use galvanized action from governments and people alike to start tackling the plastic challenge. Another mistake that many make is to treat it merely as a CSR exercise. Sustainability is a bit risky. If the organization is not aligned behind the initiative and empowered to act, it can be quite damaging. So Burberry was rated once the most sustainable luxury brand, but they lost all credibility when they burned nearly $40 million worth of unsold goods. Instead, if you take authentic action, that works. So in the first year, Fearless Girl from State Street Global Advisors helped reshape corporate boardrooms. So if a brand wants to pursue sustainability, then it has to commit to it and act. State Street pulled off one of the most incredible, audacious marketing stunts ever, but they backed it up with action, targeting 150 companies who all added at least one female board member in the first year of action. And by March of last year, that number stood at 445 companies which had acted. What gets in the way also is that audiences find it really difficult because doing good is difficult and people don't change their behaviors easily. So many well meaning initiatives fall flat because we're just lazy and we won't change unless that change is made simple. So we say, make it easy. For a brand to create a movement, it really needs to make it easy for audiences to participate. Ariel did it very simply. They changed their formulation to clean at 30 degrees rather than 40 to 60 of its previous forms of the product. And all people had to do was change the setting on their machine. This is simple, it's easy, and it's impactful. The last thing that gets in the way is not being grounded in the brand. If you pursue a sustainability agenda which isn't clearly aligned to the existing brand proposition and positioning, that'll be dissonant. Building credibility is therefore going to be challenging. So, Donald Trump advocating for LGBTQ rights is at odds with his stance and his actions relating to this audience. It's really hard to believe. Instead, we say align to brand. To be recognized as a leading sustainable brand means aligning to the brand truth. Barclays have always championed access and equality, so their sixth year of sponsorship for London Pride resonates, and they also champion LGBTQ rights internally across their entire organization. So the six key factors in sustainability branding as we see them: make it positive, be different, simplify the language, take authentic action, make it easy, and align to brand. So with these six success factors in mind, how do you actually go about it? What steps does a company need to take to build sustainability into their brand? The first, quite obviously, is to define the approach. And you must define the level of ambition first, says Hannah Harrison, who's WPP's sustainability director. So, building sustainability into the brand is powerful, but it carries reputational risk. The organization and the leadership must support the initiative and be comfortable with the risks. Brands that have made sustainability central to their image when the organization isn't fully committed can suffer significant reputational damage, like Burberry. So the implication is if the organization is fully committed and prepared, this would indicate that sustainability should be added as a core pillar to the brand. Now, how far are you willing to go? Well, there's a continuum and there's a bit of a journey here. So we've got a map that will assist brands in defining where they are playing or want to play in the future. So this is a very simple 2x2. On the horizontal axis, we've got sustainability either peripheral or central to a brand. And on the vertical axis, sustainability peripheral or central to business strategy. In the lower left-hand corner, you'll see that organizations which are not in any way pursuing a sustainable agenda or those that are taking first steps would place here. They might have certain initiatives or pledges, but they don't make this central to their business strategy or brands. On the right of that, in the lower right corner, you'll see sustainability as an initiative. Here, organizations that place here have various initiatives that may contribute to a sustainable agenda, but they're not knitted into a broader organizational set of operations. And the initiatives are often branded to build brand association with the cause. Now, if you go above into the two quadrants where sustainability is more central to business strategy, on the left, if sustainability is a business imperative but yet peripheral to the brand, Organizations in this quadrant see the commercial and moral imperative of sustainability, but choose not to strongly communicate or tie their activities to the brands. And on the right, which is sort of at the peak of all of this, is sustainability at the core. Organizations that place here commit fully to sustainability as being central to their operations, as well as making it part of their brand. So we mapped a few brands here, and you can see how various brands, most of which you probably know very well, map out in terms of how we see and rate their efforts in terms of sustainability being either central or not to the brand and to the business. We'll talk a bit more about some of these as we move on. The second thing you must do is commit and prepare. You must have your house in order before you launch anything. So if you've agreed the approach, then the business must commit fully and ensure it's supported at all levels across all areas of the operation. That means you must have your rationale and your reactive statements prepared well in advance, check your facts, verify your figures, and ensure readiness across the business before any such initiative is launched. Because once it's out there in the public, any member of the public can ask any member of the organization what your effort actually means. So the importance of sustainability as a driver downstream, you must measure it for tracking purposes. But be prepared, because you have to be able to answer the key question here. If you put this out in the market, what would Greta say about it? The third step is to find your focus, because too much breadth is a problem. So some companies have rather impressive sets of initiatives which make for comprehensive sustainability programs. But when it comes to brands, breadth is a challenge and focus is a gift. So it's essential to identify a singular point of view or issue that the brand will stand behind. If you've got too many initiatives, then the impact is diluted and it might lead to confusion for your audiences. So the implications here: identify the focus area that is globally relevant with an ability to localize, ensure that this is aligned to the brand's purpose, and then you must support it strongly, both financially and through communications. In other words, what do you really want to be famous for and what do you want to own? So we've got a case study here from one of our sister companies on Tommy Hilfiger about how a brand of the 80s can redefine the American dream. Now, when you think of Tommy Hilfiger, these are the sorts of images from their advertising that probably come to mind. If you look on the left, that's Tommy Hilfiger's America as has been picturized over the years. It's a lot of the Hamptons, it's a lot of sort of Nantucket imagery. And on the right, you see the inclusive America that exists now, or at least used to exist in the very near past. And it's got, certain attributes that are quite key to it. And our challenge was to figure out which of these attributes Tommy Hilfiger could credibly own. And there are three here that are quite strong: hope, strength, and resilience. So we created a new purpose called Anything is Possible for Everyone, with inclusivity at the heart of it. And we found a hidden jewel, which was Tommy Adaptive, which was a line of clothes for differently able people. And here's a fantastic innovation, which is magnetic buttons. So buttons that sort of attach themselves, as it were. And this adaptive range has been nominated in the Design Museum's London Beazley Designs of the Year exhibition, which is kind of like the Oscars of the design world. Then how do you execute from here? That's our fourth step. Can we identify the perfect moment to launch? So you can have a number of approaches available to execute, but some key points may assist in launching and rolling out. For example, is there an already established event that can be leveraged? Are there conferences, anniversaries, and so on? Or is there a key tension? How can we get people to work with the system, with the machine, rather than against it? So there may be an opportunity to create two messages for B2B and B2C audiences. For example, retail targets microfinance and social justice, and business banking targets an environmental cause, if you're a bank, as an example. So how do we then bring all of this to life? Through brand. We've got a lovely case study here from the International Volleyball Federation, whom we work with from our Paris office. And they're a federation with limited means, but they wanted to act for good in a way that is visible and ownable. So that's our brand experience wheel, where we start at the heart of the brand with the strategy and the positioning and take it forward into expression across all kinds. And here's a new brand that was created called GoodNet.
Every year, 640,000 tons of fishing nets are discarded or lost in the ocean, making up 10% of all oceanic litter. These ghost nets drift for years, needlessly catching and killing millions of marine species. That's why we launched GoodNet, a sustainable initiative by the International Volleyball Federation to remove ghost nets from the sea and transform them into beach volleyball nets. So these recycled nets can be placed on beaches around the world for local community use. To raise awareness of ghost nets and make the problem truly visible, we embroidered them with images of endangered sea creatures. We placed our first good nets in Copacabana, the birthplace of beach volleyball, revealing the challenge facing our oceans, educating future generations, and playing volleyball, of course. All with the support of Olympic and world sporting champions.
See the idea of bringing together our sport that also has a net and also happens on the beach so close to the sea. It's huge.
The sports volleyball is around one net. Our lives is one net, but a good net, not ghost nets.
Just 1 month after good nets hit the beach, we are already making an impact.
You know, all that trash that washes up on beaches around the world, it's finally going to be put to some good.
And our best result? The United Nations adopted GoodNet Project for its Clean Seas campaign.
What GoodNet is about is really about turning ghost nets into beach volleyball nets. Ghost nets are nets that are discarded into the seas by fishermen once they've outlived their usefulness. Either they become torn, or they're old, or they're just too flexible to catch fish. So very often in sort of bad ecological practice, these end up at the bottom of the ocean. And there are, millions of feet and meters of ghost nets that are cluttering the bottoms of the Earth's oceans. And this initiative is really about getting those ghost nets out and turning them into beach volleyball nets. So for volleyball players, as Giba, a Brazilian volleyball star and ambassador of the GoodNet project, says, nets are at the center of the game and their joy, and they love the beach. So for them, it was really hard to learn that in the oceans, there are so many nets that are doing so much harm out of sight. And, once the program took off and a tremendous amount of discarded nets, ghost nets, were picked up and turned into volleyball nets and then, installed on beach volleyball poles through the GoodNet program. Just a month after the initiative hit the beach, we started making a huge impact with about $58 million worth of estimated media coverage in key global media like BBC, Sky Sports, Eurosports, the New York Times, and so on. And now it's gone even bigger than that. GoodNet has the support of the International Olympic Committee. It's joined the UN's Environmental Clean Seas campaign. And it really sort of, exemplifies the amount of collaboration that is needed just on the back of a brilliant idea to be able to do a significant amount of good in the most sustainable way. So just to summarize then, our 6 key success factors, which we've talked about: make it positive, be different, simplify language, take authentic action, make it easy, align to the brand, and then the steps that you take to build a sustainable brand: define the approach first, then commit and prepare, find your focus, and then execute relentlessly. So with that, we're done and happy to take your questions at this point.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ash. That really was a great, really insightful presentation. I'm sure we're going to get some Some questions coming through now that we've stopped. We've had one question making reference to the recording, to the film that we wanted to show. I'm sure that we can make that available from the Middle East Brand Summit website later. So we'll see if we can fit that in together with that presentation, and in fact, hopefully, all of the presentations that we've seen today. So before we come on to everyone else's questions, I've got a question that I'd like to ask here, Ash, which sort of going back to that beginning, you talked a little bit about the Gen Zers and millennials and so on. Obviously, we know how important sustainability is to that sector. Obviously, we're now going to have the new demographic, the coronials, and I'm just wondering if you can see. Do you think that with all of the issues and the problems that we're going to be seeing over the course of the next 10 years, is sustainability still going to be top of the agenda for the next demographic? Do we think?
I'm hypothesizing, Andrew. That's a great question, but my gut says more so than ever. Principally because I think there is a general realization that life between, the balance of life between humanity and the rest of the ecosystem of the earth is a bit out of kilter. And therefore, the ways in which we act and the ways in which we consume have to be more holistic, more sustainable. And I think younger people are far more aware and conscious of this. And therefore, I think sustainability will continue to rise in primacy as a driving factor for business. And, the proof of that is really in the success of companies that have seen this quite early, although it's never early enough, I dare add. But again, if you look at the numbers from Unilever, particularly the whole policy around, building the future of the company, really betting the farm, as it were, on sustainability as a plank for the business, sustainability as a determinant of which brands to keep and which to discontinue, and the financial performance of those brands that are part of the Sustainable Brands Group. I think the numbers speak for themselves. So I, for one, would like to see more companies taking a more sustainable approach to doing business moving forward.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. We've had one question. It's often when we look at the issue of sustainability, we tend to look at those consumer-facing brands, and it is quite tempting to look at the case studies that focus on brands targeted to 25-year-olds, taking recycling this and so on and so forth. What about the B2B brands out there, though? How important do you feel sustainability is to those B2B brands?
Well, I think, we live in a strange time because automotive companies are now making PPE because that's what the times demand. And, that's a B2B product. So just as a topical aside. But I think it is important simply because, buying for business and buying for personal consumption aren't dramatically different. So a business that is a conscious buyer, conscious about sustainability, will most likely choose product, even if it is B2B product or services that have sustainability built in. You see that today more visibly in terms of some of the human practices that for example, the relationships between investor for people companies in the UK and so on, or companies that have a higher number of women on boards and women in senior positions. And I think increasingly we are, from a business to business perspective, favoring the right sorts of things. And I think sustainability falls into that bracket of being the right sort of thing.
Okay, fantastic. Well, there have been a few other questions, Ash, but we're going to have to leave it there. Sadly, we've run out of time. But the questions, I think you can see the questions, and I think they'll be in the attendee chat. So if you want to hang around a bit later, maybe answer some of those questions for our delegates. Okay. a really big thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation.